The baby is finally quiet. Asleep in the crib. Still. Calm. You think it's over. You reach down to pick them up, and the second your hands touch them, they explode into tears. You didn't squeeze too hard. You didn't wake them with a sound. You barely made contact. So why does your touch, the one thing a baby is supposed to want most, make them cry harder? The answer isn't what you think. And once you understand it, you'll never see a crying baby the same way again. Here's what most people don't realize: that cry isn't distress. Not in the way you think. That single cry, that burst that happens the moment you lift a baby, is one of the most sophisticated pieces of biological communication on the planet. It's older than language. Older than memory. It's a signal that goes back millions of years in human evolution. And it isn't just about the baby. It's about you. It's a message being sent directly to your nervous system, bypassing your rational mind entirely, designed to trigger something ancient and powerful inside you. That baby isn't crying because something went wrong. They're crying because something went exactly right. Most people assume the answer is simple. You startled them. They were in deep sleep. Babies just cry. Even most pediatricians give you the same comforting shrug. It's normal. Don't worry about it. And for a long time, that was good enough. Babies cry. Adults try to soothe them. Everyone moves on. But here's what that explanation misses. The timing is too precise to be accidental. It's not random crying. It's not general fussiness. It happens in a specific moment, the moment of physical contact, with a consistency that can't just be chalked up to chance or sleep cycles. Researchers started noticing this pattern in the early 2000s. And when they looked closer, what they found wasn't just interesting. It was profound. The startling explanation isn't wrong. It's just the first chapter of a much stranger story. In 2013, researchers at Riken Brain Science Institute in Japan conducted a study that would quietly change how developmental psychologists think about infant behavior. They tracked what happens inside a baby's body in the moments before, during, and after being picked up. Heart rate, cortisol levels, muscle tension, neurological signals. What they found surprised everyone. When a baby is picked up and carried, even if they cry at first, their heart rate drops. Their body goes still. Their cortisol levels fall. Every physiological marker of stress decreases within seconds of being held and moved. The cry isn't a sign that picking them up made things worse. The cry is a transition signal. It's the body's way of shifting from one state to another. Harvard child psychologist Dr. Jerome Kagan described it this way: the infant nervous system is fundamentally binary. It's either in a state of calm or alert. Picking up the baby forces a rapid switch between states. And the cry? That's the sound of that switch flipping. That sound you've been interpreting as pain or distress is actually the noise of a tiny system resetting itself and locking onto you. Here's the part nobody talks about. And this is the part that should stop you in your tracks. That cry, the one triggered by being picked up, is not random. It's targeted. It's a biological hook. When a baby cries in your arms, your body responds. Your cortisol spikes. Your oxytocin floods. Your attention narrows. Every distraction disappears. You become completely focused on that tiny creature. The baby's nervous system learned something millions of years ago. Crying while being held forces the holder to become more attentive, more bonded, more committed. In evolutionary biology, this is called an attachment trigger. And it's extraordinarily efficient. The baby doesn't understand what they're doing. There's no conscious strategy. But their body knows, on a level far below thought, that the moment of physical contact is the highest leverage moment. The moment when a cry will have the most impact. The moment when bonding can be deepened. Your baby isn't crying at you. They're crying into you. Imprinting. Connecting. Pulling you closer at the moment when you're most available to be pulled. But here's where it gets even stranger. Because it's not just babies who do this. And it's not just parents who respond to it. The mechanism goes deeper than family. Deeper than parenting. It touches something at the core of how human beings form every connection they'll ever make. In the 1950s, psychologist Harry Harlow ran one of the most famous experiments in developmental psychology. He gave infant rhesus monkeys two surrogate mothers, one made of cold wire that provided food, and one made of soft cloth that provided nothing except warmth and texture. Every rational prediction said the monkeys would bond with the food source. Every monkey chose the cloth mother. They clung to her, ran to her when frightened, used her as a base to explore the world. The wire mother, despite being the practical one, was virtually ignored except when feeding. Harlow called what the cloth mother provided contact comfort, and he argued it was as fundamental to psychological development as food or water. Now fast forward 50 years. Researchers at the University of Notre Dame tracked attachment behaviors in over 400 families across the first year of life. They measured how often parents held, carried, and made skin-to-skin contact with their babies, and then followed those children into adolescence. What they found was striking. The babies who experienced more contact in infancy showed measurably higher empathy, lower aggression, and stronger social bonds 15 years later. And critically, the babies who cried more during early contact, those transition cries, those attachment cries, showed the strongest bond outcomes of all. The cry wasn't a sign of bad attachment. It was the sound of attachment forming in real time. Think about the last time you were vulnerable with someone. The last time you showed emotion, real emotion, in a moment of closeness. Maybe you cried. Maybe your voice broke. Maybe you felt something crack open inside you that you didn't expect. And then something strange happened. The person you were with didn't pull away. They moved closer. They became more present, more tender. That is the same mechanism, scaled up, translated into adult language. We never stop being infants in that sense. We never stop using moments of contact, of vulnerability, of emotional openness to test the people we're bonding with, to pull them in, to measure whether they'll stay. You are not just observing this in a baby. You are built from the same blueprint. Every time you've been vulnerable with someone you love, you were running the same ancient program. There's one more layer to this, and it's the one that changes everything. Research from MIT's McGovern Institute for Brain Research found that the caregiver's response to the baby's contact cry, specifically the quality of that response, shapes the child's amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear, threat, and emotional memory. If the caregiver responds to the cry with warmth and consistency, the amygdala learns that vulnerability is safe, that closeness doesn't lead to abandonment, that the world is reliable. If the caregiver responds with anxiety, inconsistency, or not at all, the amygdala learns something different, that vulnerability is dangerous, that closeness is unpredictable. That learning, made in the first weeks and months of life, becomes the invisible architecture of every relationship that follows. How you handle conflict, how you react to intimacy, how you respond when someone you love needs something from you in a moment of closeness. The cry that happens when you pick up a baby is not just a moment between parent and child. It's the first draft of a person's entire emotional life. Here's something worth sitting with. We live in a culture that tells parents to let babies cry it out, to not respond too quickly, to avoid creating dependency, to train the sleep, to treat the cry as a manipulation that must not be rewarded. But the neuroscience tells a different story. When the attachment cry goes unanswered repeatedly in early infancy, it doesn't teach the baby independence. It teaches the amygdala that closeness is unsafe, that reaching out doesn't work, that the best strategy is to stop reaching. Dr. Alan Shore of UCLA, one of the world's leading experts on early brain development, calls this the hidden cost of emotional unavailability. The child doesn't just learn to be quiet. They learn to disconnect. The cry isn't manipulation. It's an invitation. And how you respond to it in those first months is one of the most important things you will ever do. There is a moment, fleeting, easily missed, that happens every time a baby is picked up and cries and then, a few seconds later, goes still. In that stillness, something has been established. A negotiation completed. A contract signed without words. The baby has reached out with the only tool they have: sound, warmth, pressure, and the world reached back. And in that exchange, something remarkable is born. Not just attachment, not just comfort, but trust. The most fundamental thing one human being can feel for another. That tiny cry in your arms isn't a problem to be solved. It's a question being asked. The question is, are you here? And every time you hold them close and stay, you're answering yes. And somewhere deep in a brain still learning what the world is made of, that answer becomes the foundation of everything. So let me ask you something. If a baby cries when picked up because they're bonding, what happens to adults who never learned that closeness was safe? What patterns do they carry? What do their relationships look like? And more importantly, can it be undone? That's what we're covering next. The psychology of avoidant attachment in adults, the invisible wound that starts in moments exactly like the one we just described, and what the latest research says about healing it. If this video made you think about how you were held, how you hold others, or how we learn to trust, drop it in the comments. You might be surprised how many people feel exactly the same way. And if you want to understand the hidden forces shaping your behavior before you were even aware of yourself, subscribe. Because we've barely scratched the surface.